There's nothing here.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay. As always, it seems, the lessons of Rabbi Yehuda, who precedes me, remind me of things, lessons, ideas, stories. I was very fortunate when I came back to Eretz Israel, came back from Eretz Israel. When I was in yeshiva for 2 years to Los Angeles, to be able to live close by and be meshamesh, to serve Rabbi Simcha Wasserman, Zichrono Livracha. One time, Rav Simcha was one of the Gedolim of the previous generation, and whose father was the right hand of the Chafetz Chaim. That's an idea. He was invited to a Brit Milah, a bris, in Long Beach, California. This is in Long Beach. This is in Los Angeles. And it so happened that a conservative rabbi came up to him, and he said to him, Rabbi Wasserman, what are you doing here? You're not a Chabadsker. And he answered, let me tell you. Chabad they call themselves the Tzivos Hashem, the army of Hashem. They're the army, and we're the navy. But we're all fighting the same battle. We're all fighting the same battle, whether we are in tanks, in planes, in the Beit Midrash, in our homes. As long as we are unified and our goal is to unify the hearts of all of our brothers and sisters to our dear Father in heaven, we're one. If you remind me, I want to share with you a remarkable medrash in the end, which I thought of when I read comments that were made relative to Rav Eliyahu Pereira's brilliant exposition to the nations of the world. One of the comments was, how can you consider it moral, Rabbi, to have hundreds of women and children, innocent women and children, starving, beaten, dead? How can you allow it? How can you allow this injustice? Stay tuned and we'll find out the source of that. It goes all the way back to the time of Shaul HaMelech, the first king of Israel. The story continues with David HaMelech, and ultimately it continues ad hazman hazeh, as you'll see. Okay. So, unfortunately, our copy machine is not doing well, and so I wasn't able to make copies for all of you. But the copies that I wanted to make are online, so if you would like to review anything in this class, it'll all be available for you. We learned last week the beginning of chapter 2 of Tomer Devorah. And in reality, this chapter 2 serves both as a segue and a continuation. What do we mean by segue? It leads into something else. It's a bridge, as it were. But it's also something which is an absolute continuity. It's almost as if we're continuing chapter 1. Once we see what the beginning of chapter 1 has said, and then there's a long parenthetical message, which we learned, then it goes on. So that's what we'll clarify today. On a simple level, it may seem like it's two separate books. The first part of us taught us the 13 higher attributes of mercy that we learned from the prophet Micha. That not only does Hashem bestow his great love upon us, but more importantly, how we ourselves need to apply every attribute in our relationship with others. And by doing that, we arouse more and more divine favor from Hashem, both in terms of how much kindness he gives us, but even more importantly, how we feel him. We feel close to Hashem. We feel his kindness. It's tangible. That's what the 13 higher attributes of Rachamim, compassion or mercy, teach us. So when we've learned the first power, just in summary, we learn two main lessons. The first lesson is that Hashem created us human beings. We are not like animals at all. As a matter of fact, the Ramban tells us that why is the first man called Adam? Because he was created from the earth. And he was created really the same time as all the animals, all the two-legged and four-legged animals in the world were created. That man was created as a beast that didn't speak. He had an awareness, he had a consciousness, but he couldn't speak, and he was just part of the animal kingdom. And the Ramban tells us that on day 3 of creation, you may recall I've told you this before, he created Gan Eden, this beautiful, orderly garden, more than a garden, the quintessence of what this world is supposed to be. About as close to heaven as you can get on earth. Adam was outside of it. And why was Adam then brought into Gan Eden? The same reason that anyone who experiences darkness appreciates light. In order to appreciate the craziness and the wildness and the chaos and the lack of order in the rest of the world, but rather how also once Hashem spoke to Adam and breathed into him a living soul, which Targum Onkelos tells us was a speaking soul, that he was different than all the other animals. And he could only have his helpmate come from him. He couldn't mate with any other animal because he was different, he was unique. And so he appreciated and he realized that he was unique and different from any other creation. He was literally in Hashem's image. And that, the Tomer Devorah says, is the first lesson that we learn from chapter 1. How we are in his image, meaning physically, but more importantly, through our deeds. Number 2, actually before I say number 2, why is it that he created us? Because he wanted to bestow love upon us. He wanted to bestow love on us because he wanted us to reach out for him and love him in return. And the more we show our love to him, in return, the more he'll show his love to us.
The reason he wanted to create us is because he wanted to be called a king. He didn't have something.
Of course. That's what the Zohar Kodesh tells us.
That was the reason he created us, right?
That's one reason.
That's the only reason. Because
No.
otherwise that's what is missing in him. So the Maharal says anyhow.
The Maharal says it in these bases of the Zohar Kodesh. And Rabbi Nachman says it. And the Baal Tanya says it. It's a klal gadol. But there's more to it than that.
There is?
Yes. Yes. Ein melech b'lo am is the term that's used in the Zohar Kodesh.
But he created that term as well.
We have to understand that not only is Hashem our king, and not only is it our job to recognize that he is our king, but the whole way that he created Adam was for was to be able to be gomer chesed, to take this, what's called chut shel chesed, this little tiny string of chesed that he takes out of the infinity. Because Hashem's whole essence is to do kindness. The whole purpose of creation is to do kindness.
Is that why he killed all those people?
Why he killed all the people?
He killed all the people in the flood and all the people in Sodom.
Oh, very, very good. Maybe I should skip ahead to what I said I was going to say in the end, because that really is relevant to that. Yes.
It's
Yes.
good. It's good to kill people?
It's good to kill people who are destructive.
Really?
Absolutely.
How's that going to help?
Give me a chance.
Huh?
Give me a chance, I'll explain.
I'll give you a great chance to do that.
Thank you. There's a medrash. The medrash says,
Which measures?
it's Medrash Koheles, I believe. Medrash Rabbah. It's either in Koheles or it's in Esther, but I believe it's Koheles. The Medrash says, Hamarachem ala achsar b'soifoi yitachser al rachamim. That someone who is kind to a cruel person will eventually be cruel to kind and innocent people.
So don't show on medic. Show on medic.
That's right. That's what the message is about, and that's what it brings down. It brings down Sholem Melech. So, what happened with Sholem Melech? Sholem Melech was the first king of Israel, and Adam HaRishon saw all the Doros from the beginning of time until Mashiach, the Medrash tells us. And he saw the first king of Israel killed at the hand of the Plishtim, not the Palestinians. And he asked him, how could it be? Why did you kill the first king of Israel? And the Medrash says there, don't ask me, Emor el Kohanim. It's also brought down in Medrash Rabbah in Vayikra, and Emor el Kohanim. What is that talking about? So the Mefarshim explain that Shaul HaMelech might have claimed, when it came to wiping out Amalek, he had the opportunity to wipe out Amalek. The command was given by Moshe Rabbeinu, by Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu, Timcha zecher Amalek miktachas hashmayim lo tishkach. Wipe out every last remnant of this evil. And don't forget what they've done to you. That they came from afar. They attacked the stragglers and those who were weak of heart. Those whose emunah were weak. And you, Shaul HaMelech, had the opportunity to finish the job that Moshe Rabbeinu began by killing out the last remnant of Amalek. And to make a long story short, probably all you know this, Shaul HaMelech kept alive the king of Amalek, Agag, and cattle to bring for karbonos, to bring for sacrifices. And Shmuel HaNavi comes to Shaul and says to him, what is that voice I hear? What's that I hear? Oh, those are the cattle that we're going to bring for karbonos. And Shmuel HaNavi says, your job is over as king because you didn't follow my directive.
Shaul killed himself.
No, he didn't. Shaul was killed by the Plishtim.
No, he killed himself. That's they created. So he called Shaul ala Erev Yipol.
Okay, so he fell on his sword. He fell on his sword during the war of the Plishtim.
Yeah, but he killed himself.
But he didn't try to kill himself.
Huh?
He didn't try to kill himself.
That's not very clearly.
Leave it. It's not relevant really at this point. It's not relevant at this point. That's not the
He
issue.
didn't kill him. He killed himself.
But he died. Isn't that the main point I'm trying to make?
He committed suicide.
No. It's not relevant.
Okay.
What's relevant is the issue of he was given a directive. he didn't do it, and as a result, the first king of Israel was killed. But the circumstance doesn't really matter. That's tangential. Okay. So, why did Shaul lose the kingship? Why did he lose the opportunity to bring the deliverance to the Jewish people? He might claim, the Mefarshim tell us, that he was soft-hearted. Shaul was an incredibly great Anav. He was the most modest of all men in his time. But he didn't put Hashem first. If Shaul was such a big Anav, if Shaul's priority was that he couldn't do it, why, with a vengeance, did he seek David HaMelech, and eventually, when he found out that there was a city of Kohanim called the city of Nov, he wiped out the entire city of Kohanim. Emor el Kohanim! Turn to them! Let's see how kind and gentle you are relative to them. You were vengeful against them because they hid David HaMelech. So perhaps we can look at events today as to why it seems like our army is cruel. Why there are tens of thousands. There's certainly, they say there's over 10,000. The figures may not be correct. That's what they're saying. There's more than 10,000 of the residents of Gaza that have been killed. Where's the kindness? Where's the compassion? Where is the Jewish heart? And the answer is, if you look at the history of Hamas, their mission statement is to exterminate Jews and destroy the land of Israel. How can you say that a nation, maybe it's just their theory, how could you say it's just theory if they plant rocket launchers under hospitals and schools? This is not morality, and this is the ultimate evil. And it's our job to complete that evil, which should have been completed a long time ago. Gaza should never have been given to Hamas. But again, we learn the Medrash that he who is compassionate to the cruel, as perhaps Ariel Sharon was in giving them Gaza, will eventually be cruel to the compassionate. And we saw what happened a few years later when Jews were displaced from their homes and their occupations, following exactly what happened in the Torah. So, yes, there is a limit to kindness. Hashem gave the world 120 years, and people were asking for 120 years, what's going to be? What are you doing? I'm building an ark. Why? Because you are violating the essence of humanity. You are becoming the animal that you came from. Remember we said in previous class, that when it says that Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmoi, that we're going to make Adam in our image. Who's the us? Not Rashi. What does the Ramban say? The Ramban says that this is a partnership between Hashem and the earth. Your job is to be aware that you were born of the earth. You were originally a beast, but it's your job to hold that beast on a leash, to keep that animal potential under control. Because if you don't, you'll go back to the lowest possible place you could come. And that's what happened to the people of Sodom, and that's what happened to the people of the generation of the flood. They became beasts of the field, and that evil needed to be wiped out.
The people of the flood were thieves.
They also violated the integrity of their species. Every animal violated the integrity.
Hamas.
Yes. That was.
Rashi says that there were thieves.
Rashi says there was thieves, but what was the seal that sealed it?
That's what he said.
No, Rashi says there was infidelity.
There were what?
There was sexual infidelity. Species violated. Look at Rashi. Again, it's a tangential issue. The people were much worse than thieves. If you read the Midrashim, and you read Rashi, and you read the Farshim, the lifestyle they lived was abhorrent. They said that during that period, the Midrash tells us, men had two wives. One wife was to frolic with, and one wife was to have children with.
That's not good.
And no,
Why do you not good? Man can have as many wives as he likes.
because the purpose of this world, what's the first mitzvah? Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Not to have a wife who you sterilize. Sterilization is forbidden. But that's what they did. And the purpose is to create beings and create in this world to be a partner with God. Not to just have pleasure. No, that was from Adam Rishon.
That was before the novel.
It was during the door of the Mabul.
No, that's them.
If you read the Medrash, you'll see that he mentions it there also. That was their sin.
Maybe you say.
Thank you.
You're on it.
So we can emulate Hashem also by applying the 13 attributes to our lives and derive great benefit from doing so. This is the idea of Isarusa de Lasata and Isarusa de Le'ela. That when we reach out for Hashem, we show love for Hashem, we stimulate, we arouse divine mercy upon us. And that's what Hashem wants us to do. So that, in essence, were the two lessons that we learned from the first chapter of Torah Devorah. Number one, that Hashem created us as unique and different from the other creation, in His image, both physically and through our deeds, because He loves us, because it behooves us to love Him in return, and the more we show our love for Him, the more He will give to us and show His love to us. And number two, we can do that, we can emulate Hashem by applying those 13 attributes that we learned about in the first chapter and derive great benefit from doing so. Okay, let's go back to the beginning again. If we look to the beginning of Torah Devorah, what does it say? Truly, I encourage questions, but they should be germane questions on the subject matter, not on individual points that I make, because I'd be glad to go over them with you and anybody else afterwards. But if it's on the topic, fine. It wasn't in the topic. Because we were talking, as I said to you, we were talking about how Hashem bestows kindness. You asked me about how could He be kind if He's destroying people. I explained because they violated their essence. Okay? Again, we can continue the discussion afterwards if you so desire. Again, we can continue afterwards if you so desire. Okay. Here. So, as an afterthought, almost as a cryptic message, the Torah Devorah says as follows: Lefichach, therefore, roi sheyadame el pilois hakeser shehem shloshes amidos shel rachamim ha'yonis. That it behooves us that we should emulate the actions of Keser, which is what the 13 attributes of kindness essentially are. That these 13 attributes of compassion that we've been learning about are the expression and application of Keser. Okay. So before we begin again with part 2 inside, there's two obvious questions that we have. The first question is, what's a Keser? Now, everybody, I assume, has a bit of a background, so you probably know what a Keser is, or what Keser is. It's a crown. But more importantly, what is Keser all about? Keser, as we spoke about last week, is the highest of the 10 spheres. And the answer to what Keser is and what a sphere is, we've already answered about 4 or 5 months ago. And we're going to read through that again. I have it here. I didn't bring it. I don't think I brought it. Maybe I did. Oh, I did. Yeah. So listen what the Holy Kamorna Rebbe, the author of the Hechel Brocha, says. The Rebbe of Kamorna was the Talmud of Rav Yaakov Yosef of Polonaya, the senior Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov. And he says, I received the tradition from my Rebbe that within man there are 10 spheros. What is a sphere? They are progressively denser filtering channels through which emanating light, divine light, can be accessed and used. And for each person himself is a miniature world, and everything that can be found in the lofty worlds can also be found in the nefesh, the living soul of each person. And it's therefore explained in Talmud Devorah, says the Kamorner, how one should conduct himself in this world by emulating Hashem, by making himself holy and emanating light in the same manner as the sublime spiritual spheros do. And just as the spheros emerge from the Or Ein Sof, from the light which beyond it is nothing. There's a complete darkness.
So there must be an end to it.
Huh?
There must be an end to it. If there's something beyond it, it's not Ein Sof.
No, Hashem taught it to us. He taught it in the Zohar Kodesh. It's not intuition. As a matter of fact, you're correct that the whole essence of this highest sphere, this highest of the spheres, Keser, is all about intuition and is all about machshava. And we'll talk about that a little bit later also. Very good. So too, in order to emulate Hashem, one needs to completely nullify themselves, humbling any pretension of self-importance that he has. And in this way, he'll be able to emulate the highest of the spheres, the upper aspect of Keser, relative to the Or Ein Sof, above which there is nothing. Now, as the Talmud Devorah teaches us, this will enable us not only to bear humiliation and denigration, being defamed and cursed, but to welcome it with love, gratitude, and joy. And of course, it goes without saying to never hold a grudge or seek vengeance. For this light, this attaching, this quintessential pleasure of feeling the radiance of the divine presence will eradicate any hurt or pain. And this will come from using the sphere of Keser as an example. For Keser is the source of perfect compassion and mercy. It is a realm where there is no blemish, no hatred or judgment of any kind, nor may it enter, as we're going to see, that any of those forces interfere with the ever-flowing of divine benevolence upon which we all need and rely from Hashem's goodness. And so too, those who hate or seek to harm a person, no creature should be despicable or disgusting in his eyes, as we emulate Hashem. But only with he himself should he be upset. What does that mean? A person should get upset if his ego gets in the way, his arrogance gets in the way, his flaws get in the way. And it's only with them that he should be sickened and offended, all the while joyously happy with the radiance and vitality that Hashem has given him. So that comes from the abridged summary of Talmud Devorah, the Talmud Devorah HaKotzer, and gives us an idea of what's going to be seen in chapter 2. Now, chapter 2, Parak Beis of Torah Devorah, is in a sense spiritual anatomy and spiritual physiology. In other words, how we are like Hashem, if we can imagine such a thing, in our anatomy and our actions. And let's now go to the Torah Devorah inside. After completing chapter 1, he says, Oid. Again, what was chapter 1 all about? It was telling us that these 13 attributes of mercy that we've been learning about are how Hashem directs himself to the world. And as we said in that little cryptic note, it's all based on, it's all predicated on anava, on humility, on seeing oneself as being essentially only able to receive. Why do you think it is the Torah tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most modest person who ever walked on the face of the earth? Because he was misfatel himself. He nullified himself to the divine. Moshe saw himself and saw everything in the world as godliness. And because of that, he was able to recognize that nothing in this world is really all that important except connecting to Hashem. So let's now go to chapter 2, Parak Sheni. Oid lios adam doime l'koine besoid midas hakeser. So, as we said in chapter 1, we can emulate Hashem through this midah of keser. B'tzarach shiyeh kama gufei pu'ulos shehem ikar hanhaga. And how do we do that? By looking to the physiology of the brain, of the head. And now he's going to go through the very beginning of that. So how are we similar to Hashem in our anatomy and actions? Rishayna kol es kol. The all-encompassing first way in which we can emulate Hashem is through the midas of anava, as we said. What is it about anava that makes us special and unique? I think it skipped what I have, but I remember anyway. Okay. So, Keser is composed of two parts. We learn from the Ari HaKodesh. And as we're going to read here, we're going to talk about those two parts. One part is called Atik Yomin, the ancient one of days, meaning the one who is infinite, beyond time. Not Hashem himself, but this aspect of Keser. So in other words, putting ourselves beyond time. That's the highest. And from that, as we're going to see, the Torah is going to teach us, we can't look up. We need to look at the head. And what gesture of the head expresses humility? It holds one's head down. It's the antithesis of arrogance. An arrogant person walks with his nose in the air, his head in the air. Keser, as he's going to say now, is the essence of the head looking downward. And there's a second part of Keser. Keser part B is Arach Anpin, the long face, as opposed to Zer Anpin, short face. Arach Anpin refers to this quality of being enormously patient. Where have we heard that term before? When we think about the lower 13 attributes of mercy, which attribute talks about that very idea? Hashem, Kel Rachem V'Chanun, What's next?
Fine.
Erech Apayim. Extremely, extraordinarily patient. And that's what Arach Anpin is. It's this quality of never losing patience. Even if somebody upsets you, even if somebody embarrasses you, even if somebody yells at you, even if somebody's disturbing you. When I started going to Chinese medical school, I was a Cheder Rebbe of what was called Yesod, pre-first. And the children, it was their first class. Maybe some of them were in nursery school, but it was their first class. And they'd observed, they were very excited that they had a Rebbe, these 5-year-olds. And in the middle of me saying something, they said, Rebbe, isn't this so, isn't it? And I taught them, one of the things I taught them is the importance of not shutting them up, but that we'll get to your question. Or if you raise your hand, I'll call on you. And we'll be able to address the issues you have. There has to be Seder. But in the place of Erech Apayim, there's complete mercy without any limits. The Medrash also goes on and tells us that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah on Har Sinai, he presented himself as Arach Anpin. And the Medrash describes that he was Kezaken Mali Rachamim. He was a Zayda with unending patience, full of compassion. That's this midah. And that's what we can emulate by the lower half of Keser. I want to show you something very interesting. Those of us who say the Zmiros on Shabbos of the Ari Kodesh. For Suda Shlishis, for Shalosh Shidduchos, we say the following. B'nei Achol Dichsifim, the men of our assembled group here, Talmidei Chachamim, who long the Mechse Ziv, the Zeir Anpin. We want to see the glow of the Zeir Anpin. Why is it called Zeir Anpin as opposed to Erech Anpin? Because Zeir Anpin is composed of the 6 attributes that follow Abba and Ima, Chochmah and Bina. And those 6 are how we can, as we're going to learn in this in Tomer Devorah, those 6 are how Hashem is able to take his light, make it available to us, giving us structure, bestowing upon us, and corresponding also to, as it were, the celestial Adam Kadmon, the primordial man. So, Zeir Anpin is inseparable. That's why these are called partsufim, meaning there are 4 different faces that make up Hashem's divine name of mercy. Yud corresponds to Chochmah. Hey refers to Bina. And the Hey is also corresponding to Abba and Ima. Abba is Yud, Ima is Hey. Zeir Anpin corresponds to the body itself, which is composed of 6 different spheros. Chesed, Gvura, Tfiros, Nefesh, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And the last Hey, which is the receptacle, which is the female aspect, the feminine aspect of receiving, is the last Hey. And that is Nuk, that which is hollow, so to speak. And so within Zeir Anpin are different aspects. There is structure, there is giving, there is the upper torso, And so Zeir Anpin is limited. To give you a really interesting analogy, as we said, Chachma is Abba, and Bina is Ima. And above them is the Zayda, is the Saba. Well, below them are the children who are trying to work things out among themselves. So that's Zeir Anpin. That's the limitations. Okay. But that third aspect of creating, being able to create, being able to give, is the theme of Sudat Shlishit, is the theme of Shalashidus, because this is the last moment before the end of Shabbos. This is the pregnant time of the 9th month of after conception, when we're giving birth to the new week. And it's Zeir Anpin that gives birth. And so it's so important that we remain connected to Hashem in every way, shape, and form during that time. But listen to how it ends. First, he says that during this time of divine favor, V'haz min atik yaimin, I invite the Atik Yomin to my Suda. I am inviting, together with the Zeir Anpin, which is here with me, this third aspect of Shabbos. But I'm going to invite that which is beyond time. Why do I want to invite Atik Yomin to my Suda Shlishis? Because what did we say it was? It's that aspect of Hashem which is timeless. And this is the most timeless time of Shabbos. Shabbos, which is beyond time. We want to extend. We want to be able to connect ourselves to the infinite. And so we invite the Atik Yomin to have Shalashidus with us. So we see those two aspects. We see that those are the two parts of Keser. This aspect of that which is beyond time, but is really within time. And that which is beyond space, but it really is in this place. It's an ethereal existence. So now let's read it inside and see how that all ties in to what we just said. As we said, what the Ramak is now going to tell us is that with the head and with the sensory organs, we can emulate Hashem. Let's hear how. So Rishona Kolelas Kol Hi Midas Anava. As we said before, and the first few times I read this, I thought about this as being a parenthetical idea, but it really is an introduction to the idea of the Rosh. Because the head is what demonstrates Anava. When one is modest, one who walks their head down, they say that the great tzaddik in Yerushalayim, Rav Shmuel Shapiro, would always walk with his head down. Not just because he didn't want to see anything inappropriate, but because he was constantly aware of Hashem's presence. So, Rishon Kolelas Kol Hi Midas Anava Mibnei Shu Tolui B'Keser, because it is the essence and it's attached to Keser. Now here's what he gets to the main point. Shaharei hi mida al kol amidos ve'ena mis'alis misgayis lamala. Because it is the highest of all the attributes, and there's nothing more elevated or exalted than it. Amnam, but it has another aspect. Yoredis mistakelis tamid tadir. It's frequently, constantly overlooking what's below it. It's receiving from above with its head down, but it's constantly like a mefakeach, looking down, making sure that everything's okay below, making sure that all its children are taken care of. V'zeh mishtei tamim, and this is for two reasons. Ha'echad shu boish mistakel v'sibosai. It's embarrassed. This idea of being beyond time is embarrassed to look upon that which gives it existence, this ethereal essence. Elamat silai Tamid behetivoi. But rather, after it receives from above, it's constantly giving out to below. It's looking down below. And so too, he says, and we are able to, by having received the Torahs of the Holy Arizal, we're able to distinguish that there's these two aspects. But it's implicit in the Ramak's Torah also, if you listen to what he's saying. He's saying, first of all, he's embarrassed to look up because it's just a timeless, infinite place, as we saw by Sholshidus. But it's a place also where there's giving and there's patience without end. And that's Erech Anpin. Elatado yistakel etzad mata is always looking down. Lahafchis atzmoi kol ma diyuchol. But at the same time, as he's looking down, he's constantly making himself small. And it's this midah which we apply to our heads. That one needs to always emulate with one's head this idea of keser. There's no way for one to be arrogant without looking upward. And an honest and a humble person looks down. Because there is no more patient being. There's no more patient existence than that which is humble, like Hashem, Kelokenu. Kemidas keser. This aspect of keser. V'tachlis rachamin. It is the quintessence of mercy. V'lo yikanis lefanav shum pegam. There's no flaw or blemish that can go in there. V'loy oven, as this is what we said in the Kamor and the Rav. V'loy oven, v'loy din. There's no judgments. There's no sins. V'lo shum minamoy nas min lashkiach. Nothing prevents it. Nothing distracts it from giving and giving more and more and more. V'lashpio lahetiv tadir. To constantly supervise and make sure that everything's okay. And to influence for good. Hashem never takes his beautiful, watchful eye off of us. And now, the Tomer Devorah does what we did in the first part. How do we apply that to us? A person should try, just like Keser, to not let anything go in the way of being kind and to give and to do good. V'shum avoin, oishum ma'aseh b'nei adam miluti hagoin, lo yikanes lefonav. And anybody who says anything or does anything shouldn't bother him, shouldn't affect him. To prevent him from giving. For those who need, who will benefit from his giving and doing good. Constantly. Just like Hashem takes care of, protects, looks after, watches every creation, from the largest to the smallest beast. And doesn't look down, and doesn't scorn, and isn't disgusted by any creation. Because if Hashem stopped looking out for any creation, it would vaporize into nothing. It wouldn't exist. But he supervises and gives again his mercy and his compassion on everything. And that's what we have to do also. And nothing, no person, no animal, no food, as we're going to learn out also, should be disgusting before him. Even the most insignificant of all creations should be considered as very important to you. Pay attention to it. And give whatever good it needs from you. And this is all connected to this midah of keser, this sphere of keser. And this is the general midah that we can learn from Keser and from the 13 attributes, how to be kind and good to everyone that we can. So now we're going to look a little bit closer at the head and at the sensory organs and learn how they also reflect this Keser. So number 2, the second thing is thought. That we should only think good thoughts. That the power of intention to create is powerful. I don't know if you remember, but 20 or so years ago, there was a famous book that was making its rounds. It was on a bestseller list called The Secret. Think good, and you can have anything you want. They say that the Baal Tanya used to always say the expression, "Tracht gut wird sein gut," that if you think good, it'll be good. And this is the essence of Keser, as we said earlier. Truly, the Gemara tells us, I believe in Sanhedrin, Rava Bragavra, that not only Hashem created Adam Rishon, but the great Amora, early Amora Rava, created a man, created a goylem. How did he do it? He did it through thought, speech, and deed. The power of thought is the highest place that we can be. And when we think good, we can change everything. Tzaddikim have the power of simply looking at something and change it. I told you the story last week about the Tosha Rebbe from Canada, Zichron Livracha, who was able to use the power of thought to transform a terribly cruel judgment by the Internal Revenue Service. This is the power of the tzaddikim. This is the power of Keser. That which is physical yet ethereal. Part of this world yet not. The highest place we can potentially reach without reaching the infinite. So let's read now about this second aspect. Thought. Hashniya machshavatay. And our thoughts should emulate the thoughts of Keser. That just like the chokhmah of Keser, the aspect, remember we said last week how also in chokhmah there is the aspect of receiving and the aspect of giving. So this aspect of giving never stops. And that's why it refers to the chokhmah of Shavei Keser here. I'm sorry, I had it backwards. That it never stops thinking good thoughts. And it never stops wanting to receive from the divine, the Or Ein Sof, this place which is beyond time. And there's no evil that can enter into it because it's a place of perfection. There's no difficulty, there's no judgments there. It's interesting, Rabbi Nachman speaks about that when one is in a place of great harsh judgments, there's two ways to transform the harsh judgments. With Bina. Bina is associated with tshuva, changing one's deeds, or going to a place which is above Chachma and Bina to Keser. By dancing, by being happy. By being happy, one can transform harsh judgments. And so therefore, just like this aspect of Atik Yomin, the infinite, this highest aspect of Keser, does not allow anything which is ugly, anything which is disgusting to come to it. which is the essence of Torah Akaduma, the primordial Torah, the Torah that Hashem used to create the world. That's why it's called Atik Yomim, because it's above time. It's the ancient one. In this world, there's nothing lacking. So now with us, so too, one should not dismiss from their thoughts anything that comes into one's presence. One should apply to Torah. Everything is Torah. Everything that one does should be Torah. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting. The Gemara brings down in Brachos that one of the Amoraim followed his Rebbe into the bathroom. And he asked him why. And he said, it's Torah. I want to learn from him. I'm not saying we should do that. But that's the level of the Amoraim, of wanting to make everything Torah. And that's what we need to do also. We need to make sure that all of our actions reflect the Torah. Everything should be having Hashem in mind, utilizing the 13 attributes of kindness that we spoke about, and now also our thoughts should also be connected to Hashem. So we should be thinking about the greatness of Hashem and how magnificent are His actions. And as He does good, so too we should be good. A person should not let foreign thoughts go into their mind. That's the main idea of this aspect of machshavasai, of kesem. And there's an interesting story that he brings down from the Zohar Kodesh, that in Parshas Vayakel, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his Talmidim were learning, and Rabbi Yossi started thinking about something else. Rabbi Shimon caught him, and he got very angry at him, angry in a way so as to bring him back, not angry in terms of losing his control. And he gave him tochacha, because he became distracted. And Rabbi Yossi apologized, and Rabbi Shimon said, okay, I see you're back on track. So that is the aspect of our thoughts. Now let's get a little more physical. The third way that we can emulate Keser, and with this we'll conclude, is through one's forehead. When somebody gets angry, or somebody is thinking hard, or somebody is trying to limit their thoughts, what do? They furrow their brow. Sometimes when someone's in pain, they furrow their brow. And that idea of furrowing one's brow is the essence of impatience. And so we need to learn from Keser also this quality which refers to which of the two that we learned today? Is it Atik Yomin or is it Erech Anpin? Which and why?
You have to be patient.
You have to be patient. It's Erech Anpin. And that's what the second one is telling us about Erech Anpin. Exactly. So let's read what he says, and then we'll conclude. Shlishis mitzcha lo yeh bo kushi klal. One's forehead should not have any difficulty at all. Ela yidmet tamid lemetzach haratzain. But rather, one's forehead should be longing to be in this place of ratzain, desiring, wanting, giving, helping, patience. Sheyirtzeh sakol, wanting to make sure that everything is as it should be. Afilu k'sheyimtze b'nei adam koasim. And even if you see, now again we apply it to ourselves, even if you see somebody who is angry, people who are angry, yiratzem v'yashkitim. Placate them. Be patient with them. Give to them. Quiet them down. B'ratzaina hatayiv. With your good ratzin. Briefly, let's go back to Shalosh Shudas again, to that place of Atik Yomin. What does it talk about in the beginning? It says as follows. Here. So he says, Chadu hashta, let's have tremendous joy, b'hai shata, this hour, when there's no dinim in the world, when we're getting ready to bring a new week into existence. Devorah Nov, this place where there is Rav Ravin, the most high Ratzon of Hashem, v'lei safin, there's no anger. This place which is above dinim, as we said. That's what Mitzvah is referring to, that we want to emulate this idea of there being no dinim at all, no anger, just pure ratzon shebaratzon, which is only the ratzon good. Shekein metzach haratzon, that Hashem's ratzon is tamid roitze merutze hagavurais. Hashem only wants to take all the judgments and raise them up and elevate them, umesak them and fix them. So too, if one sees that there are situations or people or places where there is anger, calm them down. And use your head. When you're coming to someone who's angry, don't go into their face, but use your intelligence. To get rid of, to quiet, to extinguish the anger, so it shouldn't get out of control and become a fire, and it should destroy. And it should be just like this, as it should be an example, same thing as this place which is so high, which is totally patient. That the place of Atik Yoimin is also the place of Mitzchatika. There is this place which is beyond time, which is incredibly patient. It's even more patient than us being patient. We can't understand that, but that's what he says. Umisham ratzakol, that from there everything is good. And being aware of that, all creatures become happy and content. That if people are not happy with you, Hashem won't be happy with you either. V'zeu tama Mishnah. And this is the explanation of the Mishnah in Perkei Avos. Kol ruach habrios neicha imeni, ruach ha'amakim neicha imeni. That whoever people like, Hashem likes. Whoever finds favor in the eyes of human beings, finds favor in the eyes of Hashem. And may we merit to that level.
Can I ask?
Absolutely.
Okay, so people of Sdom, they could see somebody and follow his way, but still it's not the way. You know, and he got support from the people. As you said, if people like you, he likes you. But it can be not on the good side, it can be on the bad side. It depends on the community.
That was also, by the way, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. That was the generation of the Tower of Babel. That they all were one language, they all were unified. But their values weren't there. Without there being a connectivity to a God, having the right values, it's impossible.
Square.
Oh dear. Do you want to talk afterwards?
I want to know why you have these long payers.
Because, two reasons. Two reasons. One, because David HaMelech teaches us in Tsfat Israel that the beard specifically is where wisdom is accumulated.
Really?
Yes.
I haven't
And
got much wisdom then, I think.
Huh?
I haven't got much wisdom.
You have a lot of wisdom.
No,
We all have wisdom. Everybody does. And the second thing, the Torah says that you shouldn't cut the peyos harosh, the corners.
Oh, I don't cut the payers.
Right. But the idea of ezu chasid, mischasid imkoina, we want to be able to do what Hashem asks of us and do it with as much demonstration as possible. So we take that which is allowed and we go beyond the letter of the law by creating law base.
So that's a mitzvah's lota.
So mitzvahs also we can turn them into mitzvahs.
Oh, really? You
Absolutely.
can turn a mitzvah's lota to a mitzvah's aseh?
It's not a mitzvah, but it's part of doing chesed. Chesed to Hashem.
To grow a long pace of doing
Yes.
chesed?
Yes.
Oh, I don't do much chesed then, obviously.
Don't put yourself down.
No, because I haven't got long pairs.
There's many ways you can do chesed. That's just one.
Which simon in the Shulchan Aruch that says you have to grow long pairs?
I can't tell you right now.
One?
I would look it up for you if you want me to.
I'd like you to look it up.
Okay.
See if you come to the conclusion.
I will tell you that the famous saying by Rabbi Nachman that
Don't go about Rabbi Nachman.
okay, I will bring you sources for Mirz Hashem. Come next week. I'll bring you sources for Payas.
Kuf Pei Aleph.
I'll bring you sources about Payas.
Kuf Pei Aleph.
I'll bring it to you, and we'll learn it tomorrow.
Look at Rabbi Yehuda and Kuf Pei Aleph.
Very good. Yashikoyach. Anything else you want to ask me?
You say?
Anything else you want to ask me?
Oh, lots of things.
Okay.
But I have
Well-
to go to the library now.
Okay. All the best. Hashem
Come to
Shalom.